Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first and probably last time I will ever make this video again. So I am asking for your support to stick around as long as you can, share the video, watch the video again at a later time, whatever, because it took me a long time to put this together. It was about 6.5 hours of recording over multiple days, over 2 separate weeks of Shadowland, in order to bring you what my attempt was at grinding to as high a stage as I can in Shadowland. Now, in doing so, I learned a lot about Shadowland, which is stuff that I want to share with you guys, but I also wanted to show you every single stage. So this is 3x footage that you're watching right now, and this is every single stage that I got to from 1 to 200, I believe 242. Now, I could have definitely gone a little bit higher if I had done a couple of things, which I didn't do. So just so that you're aware, you know, I did gain 5 stages over what I normally would have done. So because I have a VIP bonus, so I normally would have only been able to get to 237, but then there's 5 refreshes at the end because I'm VIP 20. So there's that. Second thing is I didn't bother to unequip CTPs, move CTPs around. I didn't update any of my character builds. So and I did most of the gameplay auto only. So what I would dub this is actually more along the lines of like the casual whale, casual whale Shadowland climb. And I got the CTP at 235. I'm really happy that worked out. Because, you know, you get one at 135 and then 100 stages later, you get one at 235 because the stage 1 to 35 rewards don't reset. So it's actually, you know, 35 stages closer. I'm really, really happy that I got that at 235. I might never get the one at 335, obviously, because we're going to need a lot more characters in the game. We're going to need like 60 characters added to the game for that to be possible. But I'm actually really happy with how things turned out. I think 242 is really impressive for, again, you know, a lot of my characters not having a CTP at all, right? Like, I know I have a lot of CTPs, but they're actually concentrated on like 50 or so characters. And also on top of that, like, I didn't move any CTPs around. I didn't tweak any builds. I didn't add obelisks or mini rages to characters. I certainly didn't, you know, to the more extreme end of things, you can buy that 100% CTP unequipped for 24 hours, and you can just move brilliant rage CTPs one by one to every character as you're climbing beyond stage, let's say 100. So we got past the first 15 stages there. We're moving into the stages where I have to choose the characters. This definitely goes by really fast. So if you want to see which characters I'm using and you want to pay closer attention to it, you're going to want to have to slow down the video. But then obviously I'm going to talk more slowly, so maybe just mute it and watch if you'd like. You can always keep track of the floor in the top left-hand corner. We're on floor 19 right now with Songbird. But I will try to give you guys tips as we go along. You know, and I have obviously some general tips that I saw across the, you know, 500 stages that I cleared almost, because basically what happened, like in terms of the long term, was I tried to film this over a few days at the end of a week after the Cosmic Core started to get as much cosmic energy as possible, but I ran out of time. And then there was the update live stream event for the now Invincible Iron Man update that we're in. So this was last week. And so basically, I had to stop when I had a bunch of tier 4s left. I had to stop my recording, and then I had to basically go back and start again. So you're going to see a bit of a floor jump at the end because I actually did better the second time around, and that's where I learned a lot more, and I was able to apply these ideas a lot better to my clears. And so I want to pass all that information off to you guys. But yeah. Overall, I'm really happy with the results. Like I said, I think this is like a casual whale's dream in the sense that, you know, not even my cards are really built for PvE content. My cards are geared heavily towards PvP and skewed towards PvP. So I think given all of that, I think my account performed really well. So if you have an account that's more PvE focused than mine, you know, if all those brilliant conquests and greeds that I selected, you chose rages instead, I think you could actually get higher than I could with a similar amount of effort, which, again, it wasn't like days worth of effort. 6.5 hours, still a long time. Don't get me wrong. But it wasn't, you know, like days and days and days worth of grinding. And it basically, like I said, I did it basically one shot on one day from 1 to somewhere in the 200s. And then the second day, I did it again from 1 to, as you'll see, 242. So we're off to the races here on stage 36. What you're going to notice is that on a lot of these early stages, like that Hydra stage, that the I can't remember her name, but the poison lady, the poison Hydra lady, Viper, they go by really fast. And the thing is, some of the characters, once you have Pierce and things like that, they're just too strong for the stages. So when you're wondering, like, oh, you should have used weaker characters, like, for example, Volstagg there, just one shot of that stage, it's not always possible to use weaker characters. You can see I'm still using some tier 2 characters, but some of the tier 2 characters I have left at this point, like Black Cat, she can go up into like the 70s or the 80s because of her all defense down and her debuff increase and her leadership and stuff like that. So, you know, you can min-max for some specific characters, but otherwise, you know, if you min-max all of those tier 2s and whatever characters like Crossbones, you're going to end up, there's not that many tier 2s left, right? There's only like 50 tier 2s, and you have to use up 35 of them for the first 35 stages. So, you know, you only have a few tier 2s left to use from 35 up before you have to start using transcended characters and tier 3s who will obliterate the first stages. So the way that I like to explain it on like a macro scale is if you're deciding to climb Shadowland and you're going to climb to like 100, 150, 200, any of like the big stages. My sort of generic advice to you, I have a lot of tips, but the way I want you to think about it is that the beginning is really easy. The beginning of the climb of Shadowland is really easy. The middle is hard. The middle is where you're going to make mistakes, where you're going to overvalue and undervalue characters, and you're going to get stuck with certain characters on certain stages. You're going to go too far, and then a certain character is not going to be useful anymore. Like, for example, Clea. On my first run the week before, I tried to use her on a stage 70, and she was already too weak. It's just her awakening skill wasn't doing enough damage, and she does 0 damage when she's not doing the awakening skill. So I decided that it's better to use her in the early 50s, mid 50s, and get that value rather than her getting stuck, and then I have to pair someone else with her on the team, and it doesn't really add any value to my clearing. But yeah, I was actually really surprised Elsa one shot at that stage. What I found was Shadowland is really easy for the first 60 stages. It's really easy for the last like 30 stages, and then that middle is where it's very, very difficult because you have to gauge the value of characters. So here's some generic tips that you can obviously take to improve your Shadowland climbs. Now, one tip you can take is obviously just to watch this video. And if you have an account that's comparable to mine, even if it's not necessarily comparable, you can still get a good idea for where some of these characters are able to clear. It's going to help you make faster decisions so that you're not puzzling over things for hours. Because you can certainly like optimize a Shadowland run by testing and retesting multiple characters, but that is where it'll turn, you know, from like a 6-hour event into like a 6-day event, and that's way too exhausting and tedious for most people. So having more information, having public information like this is really important. There are very few guides out there for like a full Shadowland climb deep into the 200s. It's very, very rare, and usually it's well-guarded information because, as you can see, it takes a long time, so players don't want to just give up that information, particularly if they're trying to get on the leaderboards, if they're trying to, you know, make a name for themselves, etc., like Gambit. They want to be a bit secretive about it. But yeah, you could certainly optimize things. There's certain stages I'll point out where, yeah, I could have probably saved Moon Girl for a later stage there. This one I had to play manually because Destroyer was whiffing on his awakening skill, and I was worried that I was actually going to run out of time. So there are certain stages where I will play manually, and in general, this is just a generic tip for you, you will go much further with a character if you play manually than if you play on auto, obviously, because you can line up skills, you can line up procs, you can stack all defense down, etc. And second tip I have in terms of playing manually versus playing on auto, once you get into the like late hundreds, early 200s, you have to play on manual. It basically is too difficult even for the top tier characters. They basically just don't do enough skills most of the times. There's a few characters who can break this mold for sure. There may be a few exceptions to this, but even heavyweights like Doctor Strange and stuff like that, they don't do their rotations properly. They just spam the same 2 or 3 skills, and you don't saturate the enemy with enough damage. Again, even if you're using a rage CTP. And you will see specific clips of this. I remember for a fact with Professor X with a Mighty Judgment, as you'll see, tier 4. And then my level 80 tier 3 Gwenpool. This is much later in the video, but you will see it. I tested them. I let them go basically for the first 30 seconds to 1 minute. to see if the autoplay rotation was enough to clear. And I realized in both cases that it wasn't, and I had to take over midway to ensure that they did enough damage to clear the stage. So yeah, you're always going to do better. You're always going to clear faster and clear higher stages if you can play manually instead of playing on auto. This one probably could have been saved. This Jessica Jones clear, she could have been saved until like the 80s or 90s. You can also re-roll stages. This is something that I cut out of the video in order to make the video shorter, but I have the raw footage and I can prove it. I rarely re-rolled stages. I just took the first stage that I got and I just YOLO'd it. This gets a little bit more difficult, again, as you climb into the late 100s, early 200 stages because of the scaling. And my general tip for you, if you want to climb Shadowland and you don't mind refreshing stages a lot, is always refresh for the lowest possible stage in terms of the stage that it tells you from 1 to 35. So when you're refreshing and you're seeing that stage pop up, it'll always tell you what stage it's referencing from the first 35 stages. You always want to aim for a stage that's under 15, and if not under 15, at least under 25, because what happens is they're tier 2. I believe they get basically like a tier upgrade at 15, and they get a tier upgrade at 25, even though I believe they're still tier 2. And their base HP and their base defense is much, much higher. And so basically what happens is you, as you go higher and higher in Shadowland, the multipliers on attack, defense, and HP, those get higher. Those percentages go up. And then they eventually plateau, and they max out at like 30,000. Now, when you take that 30,000, you multiply it by a small number, it's a lot different than multiplying it by a really big number. And so, again, you'll see, because I think, or maybe I didn't leave any of them in, but they may have left in 1 or 2 clears that were failures because, I don't think I did, actually. But I can tell you for sure, and I can maybe release this footage separately, it was like stage 235, something like that, or 230, and I was trying to clear the Phoenix Force stage with Jean. And my Jean has a mighty rage now, and she was doing so little damage because the scaling was maxed out, and the base stats of that, you know, the Cosmic Ghost Rider, Silver Surfer are so high to begin with. So if you're having difficulties, I would say aim for re-roll your stage down to below 15. It is astronomically easy by comparison because they have such low base stats to begin with. So, you know, when very low base stats are multiplied by 30,000, it doesn't really matter compared to super high base stats. And then obviously build more of your characters for PvE instead of PvP. Give them give them CTPs, give them proc obelisks, give them mini rages, stuff like that. So those are my tips for things that you can do. As far as how I chose characters, and this is another big one here, obviously you can just sort of, you can loosely mimic what I'm doing in the video in terms of who I'm choosing for which stages. Obviously, I'm respecting the generic Shadowland tips. You know, when it's the Spider Sense stage, I use a Spider-Verse character. When it's asking for villains, I use villains. I always try to do that. And you'll see as you climb higher, that type advantage is so important in Shadowland. So we sort of throw it off or brush it off as like not important, irrelevant. I just blow through and nuke them in one shot anyways, Alex. Type advantage is meaningless. Yeah, sure. Type advantage is meaningless for the first like 100 stages, maybe the first 120. Once you climb up higher, 150, 175, 200, 225, type advantage is so important. It's unreal. And you'll realize that characters without type advantage just do not have enough juice, don't have enough damage to clear the stage. Because you're talking a plus minus 50% multiplier on their damage when they're attacking against a weak typing. So yeah, very important to keep in mind. Typing is super important, and leveraging the typing advantage, which can also mean refreshing away from universal stages, because universals don't take bonus damage, right? So keep that in mind. That's really important to always respect the Shadowland stage unless you're using Doctor Strange. And then the next big tip I have for you, which basically informed my entire strategy. Shout out to Blade here on 89. This was probably you know, too early of a stage for him. I probably could have saved Blade into the hundreds because he did that one really well. But that was just, again, a mistake on my part. I wasn't optimizing the run. But yeah, the biggest thing that I used for choosing when to use characters was this following combination. So the first rule that I used was I'm going to use up all of my tier 1 characters first. I didn't have any tier 1 characters, but you should use up all of your tier 1 characters first. So starting from stage 1 of Shadowland, I'm not starting from 36 with this logic. Starting from stage 1 in Shadowland, you want to use your lowest tier characters first, so your tier 1s first. Once all of those are done, whatever stage you're on, then you want to start burning through all of your tier 2s. So again, I used all of my tier 2s in 1 to 35. I burned through almost all of them. Not exactly all of them. Like I saved Black Cat, I saved Baron Zemo, I saved Sharon Carter. I saved a few, but for the most part, I burned through all of them. And again, maybe some of them I used a little too early, like Richard Rider Nova, but I still wanted to use them. Then from there, I went and I burned through all of the no uniform transcended characters. So your Cleas, your Caeciliuses, your Ulix, your Warriors 3, Volstagg, Fandral, Hogan. You want to burn through all of those characters because although transcended characters are very, very strong for Shadowland, and I'll get to that in a second, they don't have uniforms. And so their movesets, for the most part, are very, very weak outside of their awakening skill. Now, some of these characters, like recently Wiccan and Hulkling, because they got awakening skills from 2024, their awakening skill hits really hard. And you'll be like, oh no, I used them too early. They're like one-shotting the stage. The problem is, if they don't one-shot or two-shot or three-shot the stage, they're going to run out of time or die. Especially if you're playing on auto instead of manual, because when they're not doing their awakening skill, they're literally doing 0 damage with their normal rotation. So just keep that in mind. The no uni transcended characters can be a little bit misleading or sort of like tricky to gauge their power level because they do so much burst damage initially with the awakening skill, but then it really collapses after that because their base rotations are shit and their base skills are really awful. Now, because awakening characters, because transcended characters have their basically their tier 3 skill ready at the beginning of the fight, you can see Drax here blowing it up, they're actually stronger on average than tier 3s are in Shadowland, up to a certain point. Now I'm not saying that all transcended characters are better than all tier 3s in Shadowland. I'm just saying that transcended characters overall, they get to saturate more damage, by and large, because they're able to pop off a awakening skill or the version of their tier 3 skill right at the beginning. And most of the time, those awakening skills have really good buffs, like crit rate and crit damage buffs, all defense down, debuffs to the enemy, accumulation buffs. And so you're able to start the fight with that and sort of make up ground, because once you climb high enough in Shadowland, you'll see these enemies have millions upon millions of HP, and you have to chew through all of that. Now, this, again, doesn't apply to every single character because there are plenty of tier 3s that charge up their tier 3 really fast, and so you can pop it off every other rotation. And so over time, the tier 3 character will catch up to the awakening character because they can pop their tier 3 every other rotation, so every like 15, 20 seconds, versus the transcended character who has to wait exactly 30 seconds in between. But again, that's sort of something you need to weigh character to character. So that's why I put in the following additional caveat in my sort of equation. So again, my equation originally goes, use all your tier 1 characters first, then use all your tier 2 characters, then use all of your no uniform transcended characters, then use your tier 3 characters and your transcended characters and sort of alternate between them, and you'll find out why in a second, why we alternate between tier 3 and transcended, despite the fact that I said transcended are a little bit better. And then once those are all done, then you move into your level 80s, and then once all of those are done, you move into your tier 4s. I was able to do this exactly right in the video. I didn't leave any. I believe I left like 1 or 2 non-level 80s at the end that were just support characters like Nick Fury and White Fox. But the reason why I'm saying when you get through all your tier 2s and all your no uniform characters to move into tier 3s and transcendeds sort of at the same time or back and forth is because the second piece of the equation on this Heimdall 104 stage is awesome. The second piece of the equation is to use up characters in reverse chronological order, which means that you want to use characters based on how long ago they were released or how long ago they got their uniform. You want to use those first. Maybe it's not reverse chronological order, it's in chronological order. But basically, you want to save, like if you have 2 transcended characters and one of their uniforms was released in 2020, and one of the other one had a uniform released in 2024, and you have both characters and you have both uniforms, use up the 2020 character first. And you probably want to use up that 2020 character pretty soon because they're generally going to be a lot weaker than the character that got a uniform in 2024. So again, you'll see this executed somewhat well. Like here, for example, I probably should have saved Spider-Man 2099 because he was released in 2023, but it was a Spider-Verse stage, and I wanted to burn him up, right? I didn't want to refresh the stage. But in general, even if you have like a level 80 character, if for whatever reason you have an old uniform, you may be surprised at how much worse they are despite the fact that they're 80. Again, you don't want to, burn characters too early that are very, very strong, but I found that using this combination of ranking in terms of whether they're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, 80, or tier 4, and then also combining that with when was their latest uniform was released or when were they released as a character is a really good way to figure out. Like, for example, Red Guardian here on this stage and also Yelena, they're good Transcended characters, don't get me wrong, but they're old now. They're from 2019, I think. So they're starting to slow down, and you can see here, I think I'm playing this fight. I don't think it's on autoplay because I'm classing the skills really fast. I mean, the autoplay box is checked, but I'm actually manually playing, and it's actually a very tight fight here. You can see that Wiccan still hasn't spawned in, and I'm already at the halfway point. So again, even though this is a Transcended character, I have 25% Pierce, I have a proc Obelisk on him, so like it's a good build and everything. It's an old uniform by today's standards. It's an old uniform, right? Like, hey, you got Mystique level 80, that's awesome. But if you're using base Mystique, she was released in 2019. So just keep in mind when the character was released that you're using, or when the uniform that you're using was released, because that'll inform you in a big way of how strong that character is, in addition to obviously like other factors, your build on the character, again, whether the tier 1, tier 3, tier 2, whatever, and then also whether the character was historically known for PvE or PvP. That's another thing that I can't really explain to you in higher depth. You sort of just have to know it, more depth. For example, the difference between Icarus and, not Cersei, Athena. Athena and Icarus are both released at the same time. They both have uniforms released at the same time, Alex. Should I use them on the same stages? Well, no, because Icarus was a PvP character, and Athena is a PvE character. So Athena can actually go to a much higher stage than Icarus can. Again, you have to weigh all of these things, but it's essentially a combination of that first thing I explained about, like, you know, their highest rank and saving the 80s and tier 4s for the end, plus the chronological order of uniforms and releases, plus getting through all of your support characters first, then getting through all of your leadership characters, then getting through all of your leadership characters, then your supports, and then leaving your DPSs, which should be the big shots, for the end. So yeah, those are my biggest and most helpful tips that really guided me. And then again, also consider the stages. So this is another big one here. I didn't do a lot of refreshes, but I'll try to call it out when I see it and I remember. Certain stages are just straight up harder than other stages, and vice versa. Some stages are like a lot easier. In general, these relay stages are the easiest because you only have to fight 4 characters, you can leverage type advantage, and you have 3 minutes. On the flip side, the entry stages or the villain wave stages are the hardest. In the sense of the villain wave stages, you have to go through 3 waves and you only have 3 minutes. And you get sort of punished where you can beat the boss really quickly, but then these waves of enemies will keep spawning, and you actually have to get through them before the next wave will start. The next wave doesn't start as soon as you kill the boss, so that's very frustrating. And then for the entry stages, it's fairly obvious. If you play a lot of Shadowland, you only have 1 minute, right? You have to clear 3 characters and then 3 characters on the first round and the second round, but the difficulty lies in the fact that you only have a minute to do it instead of 3. So entry stages are by far the most difficult, and there were a couple of times that I refreshed off of entry stages because it was just too, it was just going to take too long, and I just needed too much damage, and I was going to have to burn and waste a really high, strong character that I didn't want to waste or burn. So keep that in mind as well, and if you're struggling, consider refreshing the stage. Just keep in mind that the more you refresh a Shadowland stage, the more expensive it gets. It's got like a scaling gold cost. So don't get too crazy with that. This is Kid Nova on stage 114. Again, I was doing this manually because I believe on auto he would have run out of time. Anything that's like sub a minute left is absolutely autoplay, is not going to work on autoplay. Also consider that some characters are just really bad on auto. Now this tip is not as important to those of you that always play on manual, but for those of you that want to replicate something like this, even if you can't go to stage 240 and you're like, you know what, I just want to get as much cosmic energy out of the event as possible, Alex, because I saw you made your video and you got 6 cosmic core rewards. That's crazy. So I'm going to do this with my roster, and I'm going to try to get to whatever, stage 100, stage 150. But I don't want to sit there playing every single stage. Well, the good news is that most newer characters released in the last couple of years have really good autoplay rotations, so you don't have to worry. The bad news is there are some characters who, despite being strong, have absolutely terrible autoplay rotations. The ones that come to mind off the top of my head, Yelena and Black Dwarf. I watched both of them go down to the wire on a stage on auto and then fail and lose in the last 10 seconds. And I was like, man, I just wasted 3 minutes. I just burned through all this, battery life on my phone. This clip you're seeing here, actually, of Black Dwarf is a rerun. The first one that I did, you can see I'm holding the 3rd skill for a very long time. I even had to turn off the autoplay because the autoplay was interrupting me and interrupting the 3rd skill when I was holding it down. But yeah, certain characters are just really bad on auto. They don't saturate properly. They don't, do the skills properly, or they just sit there doing 2 skills when they have 5, and you're just not getting most of the damage. So pay attention to that. If you're failing with a specific character, maybe watch them for a little bit, see how they do their rotation, and then if you have to step in and do it yourself, that's fine, as long as you clear the stage. That's what's important. And then the other generic tip I have for you, if you want to do something like this, again, on any sort of stage, whether you're trying to climb higher than me or lower, start early, because Shadowland takes a long time. I mean, this took me 6 hours, and I was watching like Netflix movies at the same time and stuff like that, but it can certainly take you longer, especially if you're not used to it, especially if you don't have max pierce, maxed out swords and things like that. Obviously, the higher attack your characters have, the more damage they do, the easier it is, for sure. But yeah, always give yourself time. Even I ran out, which is why I had to make that explanation at the beginning of the video. Even I run out of time on Shadowland, and I leave characters on the table and leave Shadowland tokens wasted. So don't underestimate how long Shadowland takes, first of all, and then also so you don't stress yourself out too much. Give yourself enough time. Here on this super giant stage, I was also playing manually because she just doesn't play well. You can test it yourself. If you throw her on a high Shadowland stage, she just sits in 1 or 2 of her skills for the whole time, and she never does 3, which is where a lot of her damage lies. So yeah, this one I was actually really impressed with. So this is Iron Fist, and I believe this is on auto. I think you can tell it's on auto because he doesn't cancel out any of his skills. It's actually crazy. The autoplay for some characters, like I said, it's just really good. I don't have a good explanation for it because this is an older uniform. This is from like March 2021. So this is like 3.5 years old now, but it's just good. He's just really good on auto. Like, obviously having a 60% increase attack self-lead is great and is helpful, but I thought that I was going to have to step in for Iron Fist, and I didn't have to. This Yelena stage is a rerun as well. She was unable to do this by herself on auto, and I had to step in and do it for her, but when I stepped in and did it for her, you can see the damage is insane, and she is more than capable. So I probably could have pushed Yelena higher to like 140 or 150. And then again, if I had stacked up her build even more, we could probably go closer to 200 on manual. But again, I just wanted to make it easy. I wanted to get it done in like a chill way, not in like a very serious try-hard type of way. This Molecule Man stage, quite nice as well. Just tons of AoE. This is a really good boss, this Destroyer boss, because you can basically double dip on the damage, right? Because if you have big enough AoE, you're hitting both of them at the same time, you're essentially doubling your damage. Just something to keep in mind. Sometimes one of the destroyers runs away from you and the targeting gets loose, and then it halves your damage. So you can be doing really well in the first half of the fight, but then it slows down in the second half because the targeting isn't hitting both of them. So if that's happening to you, just make sure you bunch them up together, and then you do enough sort of crowd control so that they can't get away. This Juggernaut stage is probably a good place for me to take a little quick sip of water before we continue narrating this run. And in general, yeah, I didn't like these villain wave modes, but they did pop up a lot, and I didn't want to refresh out of them too many times, so you will see them. But yeah, in general, also another sort of generic piece of advice, characters that have accumulation based on damage taken, so damage received, like Juggernaut, like Absorbing Man, like War Machine, like Sharon Rogers, Luke Cage, etc. They tend to do worse in Shadowland if you play on if you play on auto. So you have to play on manual. let them accumulate, let them stack up that damage taken so that they can pop off. And Sharon Rogers is probably the best example of this. Not to mention the fact that Sharon's autoplay rotation is terrible. She does like 5 and then 3 and then 2 and then 4. It's just awful. Here on this Absorbing Man stage, I also had to play it manually. Again, the entry stages are very difficult because you have a third of the normal time, but Absorbing Man does get it done there. Here I started using, I tried starting to use older tier 3 characters like Falcon, and I was actually impressed with how much damage Captain Falcon was doing. I think he might have a CTP of energy on him, which explains the damage. I also had to remind myself how some of these characters play, which is actually really fun. I know that it might seem crazy to you that I said I did almost 500 stages of Shadowland over 2 days. But yeah, it's really nice getting a chance to play characters who I haven't touched for years and being like, oh yeah, like that character was really fun to play, or like that character had a really cool quirk, like how Kingo does more hits on his skills after you've popped his 5th, and he has those like finger guns on his 4th skill. Just like cool quirks or sort of like unique abilities, unique animations that we just don't see anymore unless we're playing the character all the time. A little bit of a note here for Spider-Woman. I believe there was another stage. I believe it was actually around this floor, 127, around the 120s. But it was a Spider-Verse stage. And again, because Spider-Verse stage is in the 30s, the scaling is much high. Like the base stats are much higher. So when you couple that with the scaling, the defense gets really, really high. And she was unable to clear it. I tried multiple times, but she kept getting one-shotted by Electro in the second. I think it was Electro or Mysterio in the second phase. So I had to re-roll to a different stage. Here, I used 3 characters who I felt like they just basically couldn't get it done. That's why that was not a solo. It was 3 characters, and just putting together a bunch of old transcended characters to one-shot 128. There on 129, I probably could have saved Kate Bishop for a higher stage. She did really, really well. I think it's in part because she had a CTP of energy equipped, but yeah, she did that stage very, very fast. Definitely could have saved her. On the flip side, I was really happy that I decided to use Cersei around this stage, because although she's getting through it pretty fast, the thing with Shadowland is like you can't push it too much, right? Like you're seeing here, you're like, oh man, you still have like half the time remaining. Yeah, that's true, but just a little bit less damage and she might have run out of time, just because of the way that defense and HP works and how, some of the characters are not taking damage until they come in. So if I had taken, 20 seconds longer to kill the characters that allowed Red Hulk to come out, then Red Hulk would die more than 20 seconds later. He would die 40 seconds later. And then I only cleared the stage with 50 seconds left, so it would have almost been a timeout. Here on 131, I think I went through a couple of characters and they were unable to do it. I think I tried Gilgamesh or something like that. And he wasn't able to do it, and I tried some other combat type, I couldn't recall who. So then I tried it with War Tiger, and he actually is able to do it. Very impressive. War Tiger as well has no obelisk or CTP, so this is pretty good. Again, you don't really want to get this uniform, but if you already have it, not a bad Shadowland character at all, and very easy to play. I am playing this manually to make sure he does as much damage as possible and doesn't just sit in the 1 and 2 skill. But yeah, this stage can be brutal. Something you don't see and you're not going to notice because I cut out all of the clips, but there are a couple of clips in a couple of these stages where my character just blinks and dies and just gets one-shotted. Again, once you get to a high enough stage, once you're in the 150, 200 range, the scaling is so high that all the enemies one-shot you no matter what character you're using, right? They'll one-shot Adam, they'll one-shot Wolverine, they'll one-shot Sentry. Obviously, if you have Revive or Immortality, you don't actually get one-shotted. But in terms of damage, like they're all doing, a million plus damage per hit. So even Hulk would get basically one-shotted with 500,000 HP. Not to mention that the stage hazards also increase the amount of damage that they do. So if you have the lasers or you have the guns that pop up for the Kingpin stage, those can also basically one-shot you. So once you get into the higher stages, you have to pay pretty close attention to that stuff, or you have to finish the stage really fast. Hawkeye there probably could have gone to a higher stage like Kate Bishop. Those two are probably some of the best examples of characters that were sort of wasted. Here I was actually really impressed with MODOK. I think this is on auto, And he's a really good autoplay rotation. Very few characters, I have to say, very few characters rotate through multiple skills like this on auto. I actually can't remember if this is auto or manual, but I do remember that I was impressed. I didn't think a uniform released last year or a year and a half ago would be able to do this stage as well as he did, but he cruised through that stage. And in general, those stages where you have a specific ability tag required are very difficult if it's not like fire for the symbiote stage. That shit is always like mad easy. Gambit here on 135. I think I had tried to use him previously on like a 115 stage and he blew it up in like 5 seconds and I reset. Again, I probably definitely could have gone higher with him there, but at some point you just have to use a character. So that's something I also want to impart for you guys. I'm not showing you the process that I took for each time I chose the character, but you eventually reach a point where you have more good characters than you have available stages, and you're just going to have a surplus of strong characters, and you're going to have to start whittling them down one by one. Don't feel bad, but also don't, spend the whole time choosing, right? Because again, it doesn't make Shadowland fun anymore, and you stress out too much over like, oh, I could have saved him for one more stage. I could have used him 5 stages higher. I think is 5 stages higher really going to make a difference to you? You're still going to need 4 other characters to climb that high, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about it. This one, on the other hand, Craven, this is the best possible place I could have used him. Again, I could have re-rolled to an easier stage. Like, for example, I could have re-rolled to the Blast Relay with Lash, Wiccan, and Sister Grimm. And he probably would have eaten that stage alive because he has the support buff. And he's also a speed type. But because I decided to do it on this generic villain stage, this is as close as it gets. 26 seconds left? Are you kidding me? It's just absolutely insane. Here with Gilgamesh, he was unable to do it solo. I had him left over from failing the Hawkeye stage, so instead I decided to put in Valkyrie here as a support because these are all villains, so he gets a massive bump to his damage, and with that massive bump, he's able to clear it quite handily. Again, here you can make a choice with some of these stages. Do you add in a support character, or do you try, to shuffle them around? At some point, you're going to realize that because nobody plays perfectly, you used the character a little bit too late. And then you're going to be like, well, if I beat this stage, for example, with a different character instead of Gilgamesh, or for example, this stage here where I'm using Luke Cage and Quasar and Beast, because I tried with just Luke Cage, I tried with just Quasar, I tried with both of them, it didn't work, so I had to add in Beast, and it finally worked. Maybe I could have cleared this stage with somebody else. But then I'm going to be on stage 140, and I'm still going to have Luke Cage, who just failed on 139. I'm still going to have Quasar, who just failed on 139 as well. It only gets more difficult from there. So that's sort of my thinking, where it's like, if you use a character and they just barely lose, you're probably better off just adding in a small support, or if it's a rumble type stage, adding in a character that can do a little bit of damage with them, and just clearing the stage with 2 instead of 1. I find that to be much less stressful than trying to save that character using someone else instead, who's going to, again, clear it with 5 seconds left. And then you now have the added pressure of finding a use for this character on a higher, more difficult stage when they already proved to you that they don't have the juice for a lower stage, right? So yeah, don't exhaust yourself too much. It's like playing Timeline Battle on manual. We can only take so much psychic damage, folks, before it gets to be too unbearable. Here, Scream really impressed me. I think she has a CTP of energy, so keep that in mind. She does have a CTP build, but this is pure auto, and she's absolutely crushing it. Just crushing it with the damage. Really nice AoE, really nice crowd control. And funny enough, crowd control is actually really important for high Shadowland stages because the enemies have way too much HP and defense. So being able to lock down the enemy with snares and binds and paralysis and stuff like that, so that they can't move around, dodge your attacks, dodge your awakening skill, your tier 3, run out of the way of your AoE, is super important. And characters who can't do that tend to struggle, and characters who can do that tend to excel. Spectrum is another one of those characters that seems kind of weak, but if you were to play her on manual instead of auto, she's actually insanely strong. So I think I could have saved her for a higher stage in the 50s or 160s if I had played her manually, but I was playing her on auto while watching, I don't know, Firefly or Solar Opposites or something like that. So yeah, she ended up doing 142 for me, but that was, as you can see, pretty solid. Yeah, overall, I would say I'd never want to do this again. Just because it's tedious, right? It's like 6 hours of your time. It's pretty brutal. But at the same time, it gave me a certain sense of satisfaction, and I was actually surprised with myself that I was able to get all the way up to 142. I didn't think I would get that far. I actually forgot halfway through doing it. I didn't realize that if I do this right, I'll get the CTP. And then when it dawned on me that I got to the CTP stage, I was like, oh, sick, we get a free CTP out of this. I already burned that CTP, by the way. I did a bunch of CTP combines off camera. They were all a disaster, all a failure. For any of you wondering, I went like 0 for 6 to get a brilliant CTP. So very cool system there, Netmarble. Thank you very much. But on the plus side, I saved up, or I burned about 50 inventory spots that I had to make way for other things. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, the CTP selector wasn't doing anything. I wasn't using it for anything until I got it, so might as well use it. Here on 144, I decided to use Makari, Groot, and Crescent. Crescent, I think, is one that people forget about. It's a 2019 uniform, so it's a long time ago. 2019 or 2020. It's a long time ago. Maybe it's 2021. Anyways, it's a long time. I think it's 2021, actually. But it's a long time ago, the uniform, and it's also weak. It's a very weak uniform. She doesn't do very much damage. So I would suggest if you have this uniform for Crescent, even if you have a good build on her, that you should try to use her before 140. I was not able, she was completely unable to do this stage by herself. And as you can see, even with Groot and Makari, there was difficulty. They did struggle. So I think all three of them are probably better off left for a lower stage. Again, unless in Makari's case, you're playing her on manual, you have like a Mighty Rage, then in that case, yeah, sure, she could probably go higher than 140. Not too much higher, I would guess, but she could probably go higher. But again, they're 2021 characters, so don't expect the world from them. This was definitely too early to use Satana, even though she has a support build, because she's a early or mid 2024 uniform. It's very, very recent. But again, it was more a fact of me not wanting to refresh the stage. And I also just wanted to see her cool ass abilities, man. She has gorgeous animations. Always love seeing them. Here on 146, Kitty Pryde actually surprised me. I didn't think she would be able to do it, but I kind of wanted to YOLO it. And she actually slaps. Her tier 3 hits super duper hard. Again, it's helpful that she has a self-buffing lead like Iron Fist, but yeah, I kind of just forgot about this uniform from last year. I thought it kind of sucked. A lot of people thought it sucked, but it does a little bit of work in Shadowland, so I guess that's something. I believe this is on auto. I may have stepped in at the end because I was a bit nervous in the last like 10 seconds, but yeah, otherwise it's totally fine. Oh, there, I forgot to edit. I forgot to edit out that cut of this is not Moon Girl. I can't remember her name. Yeah, I genuinely don't remember this character's name. But yeah, she's crushing this villain stage. This is another character that Moonstone. Yes, Moonstone. She's good. Like, she's obviously good here, and she probably could have been saved for a higher stage. But another character who is so much better, right? She could easily do in the 200s if I was playing her manually. On auto, she's going to do a really funky, weird rotation. She's not going to do her accumulation skill. She's going to perform a lot worse. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Squirrel Girl on 148 here. She did solid. The speed relay. I love this stage. Very, very easy. And I really enjoyed watching the acorns rain down. This one I actually stepped in on to play manually because I wanted to. It was just fun. I just really like her animations, and I never get to use her, so I was like, screw it. Let's just see what all this shit looks like. And again, she looks like Thanos. It's like super funny. But we had time left. It was fine. Here on 149, we had to triple up again. Mantis, I think, could have been saved for a later stage on her own. I think, to be honest, I think maybe all of them could have been saved. I think I overreacted on this stage. I was just getting a bit frustrated in the middle. Here, I think I waited too long to use Quendel, especially with his PvP build. Proxima, yeah, she's just a support. I don't think she's going to do a higher stage by herself. And then Thena probably could have done... I don't think she could have done the stage by herself, but maybe with just Proxima I could have done it. So yeah, again, a bit of an overreaction on some of these stages, but you sort of have to balance them out, between, again... what's difficult, what's easy, and what's also gonna save you time, because you don't want to be here playing this shit forever. Gore has a ton of AoE, so keep that in mind. He's really good for these rumble stages because he just hits everything with every single bit of his damage. It's very, very nice. Full saturation there. Tons of crowd control, so these Ultrons who normally summon a bunch of shit and just crowd up the map aren't able to do that because he just absolutely locks them down the entire time. I think he's pretty underrated for Shadowland despite being a full PvP character, and in my case having a full PvP build. This is an authority that never procs, so he has literally, this is just his raw damage, and he crushes it. So that was like a perfect stage for Gore. It's kind of funny because some of these stages I'm clearly overreacting and using characters way too soon, and then other stages it's like absolute perfect. Like Gore could not have gone one stage higher, right? That was absolutely, 151 was his absolute maximum unless I was going to swap over his build. But you're gonna see soon there's gonna be a jump. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but this was my initial run on the day of the weekly reset when they announced the Cosmic Core. So I think the Cosmic Core had come out 1 or 2 days before, and I had started climbing Shadowland slowly, but I left the bulk of my run for when I could record on the Thursday, and then I ran out of time. So there are definitely more overreactions and sort of bad decisions made here. And again, when you see that big jump, I think I'm going to jump from like the late 60s to the early 80s. There's a big jump here because that was from my Shadowland run before the weekly reset compared to my Shadowland run after the weekly reset. It just goes to show you how much a little bit of practice in Shadowland with your roster goes a really long way towards you understanding, you know, this character can do this stage, this character can be saved, that character can't be saved, have to use them a lot earlier. Icon, I felt like was pretty bad solo. Again, this stage overall is a bit of an overreaction. I don't think we needed Polaris and Toxin. We could have just gotten away with using one of the two. But yeah, Icon kind of surprised me. Kind of low damage for a character released so recently this year. We have Domino and Nick Fury here on 155. It's going to be a little trippy because you're going to see Nick Fury again. The only way to explain that is what I was just saying about the Shadowland run in the week before, in sort of the week before the weekly reset versus right after the weekly reset. And I think it was September. The update came out last week, so it was the week before that. This stage is also an overreaction. Iceman, Magic, and Emma Frost. I think I was just trying to burn characters at this point. This was all filmed on the 29th of August and the 30th of August. So that's kind of the time frame for when this all went down. But certainly my second run was way better than the first. So that's another piece of advice I have for you. If you try to do a Shadowland run like this is again a huge overreaction on this stage. I didn't need all these characters. I probably could have gotten rid of Mr. Sinister. By the way, Mr. Sinister, very good for Shadowland. Very good for Shadowland. So keep that in mind. But yeah, my advice to you, if you do a Shadowland run or a Shadowland climb and it doesn't go well, don't beat yourself up. Mine didn't go well. As you can see here, I'm panicking using 3 characters per stage. Just get a feel for your roster and get a feel for characters and how they perform. And then use those tips that I laid out, that I explained, you know, tier 1, tier 2, no uni transcended, tier 3 transcended, level 80, tier 4 in that order. And then while you're doing that, especially once you get into the tier 3 and transcended territory, use up the characters with the older uniforms or the older release dates first. There's Havoc as a solo on 159. I think this was a really good stage for Havoc. I don't think he could go too much higher unless you had a better build on him. But this is also being played manually. I was screwing up the rotation at first, so even though it is manual, it's kind of like shit gameplay, you know, because I wasn't like hitting. I was like missing half of my proc, so it was pretty bad. I think I fixed it later on, but at first it was pretty bad. Or maybe I wasn't playing until later. I can never remember with some of these. They also kind of bleed together. Again, but yeah, certainly don't get discouraged if you try a Shadowland run and it doesn't work out the first time. You have to get a feel for your roster. You have to get a feel for characters and how far they can go, and it'll help inform your decisions in future runs. So yeah, but I would say try to. This is another massive overreaction. Try to do, if you want to do a Shadowland run, try to save it for when obviously you have the time to do it, like you don't have work or school, pressing on your time. But then also when there's a Cosmic Core event. I would not do this outside of a Cosmic Core event under any circumstances. You would have to pay me a lot of money for me to do a climb like this. And this is not an invitation for any of you to donate. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, you couldn't pay me to do this outside of a Cosmic Core event, because it's just not worth it, right? Week to week, grinding this out it's not enough fun on its own. And this is Dr. Voodoo absolutely obliterating stage 161. He absolutely could have gone way further. I believe he has a CTP of energy, which is a bit of a rich build, a bit of an expensive build, but he rips this stage in half. And this is not an easy stage. These wave modes, especially with these visions at the end, if they crowd control you, they eat up a ton of time and they can one-shot you. So he absolutely wrecked this on auto in a minute 12. Is crazy. He could absolutely go into the 200s, and I love using Dr. Voodoo and Man-Thing for timeline survival because of their crazy burst damage and the panic effect that they have that applies in things like Shadowland and timeline survival. Here, another classic overreaction, but then again, you know, Sabretooth is PvP, Thing is PvP. There isn't really a lot of damage missing. It's just a little bit to get over the hump, and it's sort of just like keeping them all crowd controlled so one of them doesn't slip away and kill you while you're focusing on the rest. It's still pretty tight. It's down to the wire. It's down to the last minute. So I actually don't know if this was an overreaction. I would have liked to use these characters on different stages, but then I would have had to use Thing and Sabretooth way earlier, like in the 120 range or 130 range. Here, this is like an abject overreaction. I just blow up the first line in the first 30 seconds. Probably did not need Valyria, or maybe not Wenwu, depending on, you know, your builds on them. But one of them probably could have gone easily. You know what? Honestly, Strife could have maybe soloed that. Here on 164, this is Omega Red soloing. He's very strong, very, very strong. So he could go higher. And you know, when we say recent tier 3s have been really good, like Cassandra, Sabretooth, Man-Thing, and people don't believe me, look at this. This is on auto. He's just absolutely shredding their DPS. Like, he's shredding their HP. His DPS is insane. He gets that done in under 90 seconds. Thane here on 165. This is a very difficult floor because it's that the Phoenix Force that scales insanely. I think he could definitely go to a higher stage. He does this one well, don't get me wrong, but I think you may be better off if you don't mind refreshing Shadowland, save your Thane for like a 200 plus stage, and then just refresh for like a low whatever speed or combat relay or even like a blast rumble. He'll rip that to shreds. He'll just absolutely tear that apart. I don't think he has the flame tag, but he may be able to do this. No, he's not a hero. I don't think he can do the symbiote fire stage. But there you go. I started getting first clear rewards there. So you can see those start popping up because I had never climbed this high in Shadowland before. This 166 stage, I was actually surprised Rachel was not that good for Shadowland. I don't know if it was the stages that I was choosing, but I found that Rachel, her damage was very low for Shadowland. I was pretty surprised. I don't know if she's lacking all defense down or if there was something else going on. Hit me in the comments if you've used Rachel to climb Shadowland and you've had success. Maybe I was trying on a Phoenix Force stage, but I was not very impressed. Here, again, I probably could have just used Hope. She-Hulk, I think, is a character that I used too late. I probably should have used her earlier on a speed relay. The speed relay is really easy because they're all male, right? It's Ant-Man, Winter Soldier, Spider-Man, and Hawkeye. So she would just eat them alive with her self-lead. Probably unnecessary to bring along Hope as well. Here at some of these stages, it's just insane how fast it goes, but you don't have another character. So unless you're going to re-roll the stage, you just have to use a fire character, a fire type, but they don't have to be a hero. Green Goblin's not a hero. Here on 169, it's a little bit tricky. You can sometimes die to the arrow because she just gets loose. She gets out of the AoE and the sort of guard break, and she just one-shots your characters. I had to reset the stage a couple of times because I believe Yondu kept dying. Franklin obviously won't with the artifact, which is a nice sort of peace of mind thing. But again, this is a bit of an overreaction. I maybe would have liked to save one of these supports for a later stage to just use as a support, but I was a bit desperate here. This 170 stage, another another clear overreaction. Black Swan is very good for Shadowland. For those of you wondering, she may have been able to do this stage or a similar stage on her own. She hits really hard. She has good AoE, good debuffs. She's very, very nice. And then you can save the Enchantress support and the Sin support for something else. This one here with Ultron, I had to play myself. Ultron is pretty strong when you can play him. He's sort of like a worse version. He's like a poor man's version of Sharon Rogers. So if you can play him yourself, especially with a proc, either like an energy CTP or like a proc obelisk, he can hit really hard, as you can see there. He almost one-shotted Hela. But if you let him go on auto, he just does a bunch of goofy shit, and he won't do any damage, and you'll run out of time. So rather than waste your time, and he has a self-buffing lead, which is very, very nice, like 55% attack or something like that. Again, I probably didn't need both of those supports, but I was a bit desperate in this initial run. So that was 171. This is 172. Also an overreaction, but here you can see some Cassandra Nova. Very, very strong for a no uni tier 3, right up there with Omega Red. And she doesn't even have type advantage here, so imagine that. If Rocket was a speed blast type, or a combat type, excuse me, she would be absolutely blowing him up. So there, I actually think I'm going to pause it. Here is where I jumped. So I went from like 172 in that Cassandra clip all the way to 189. So this is now the second week, and you can see that I have, you know, just like ramped hard. So basically, this is where I'm now using my 80s, level 80 characters. But you can see that I was able to get, you know, almost 20 stages or 15 or 20 stages higher before having to resort to using my level 80 character. So I was really happy with the performance there. With Mr. Fantastic here, I had to play on manual to make sure that he landed his proc, because you got to pass the proc from the 5th skill to the 4th skill, or from the 5th skill to the tier 4, or sorry, to the tier 3. Again, he can do this stage at level 80, but I believe this is with a PvP build as well. It's with a Conquest. But yeah, you have to play, at this point, you kind of have to play manually. Echo, I think I didn't play manually, and she actually surprised me. I originally queued up into this stage at 190 with Echo and someone else. I think it was like Black Widow with a PvP build or something. And Echo just obliterated, no, it was Shadow Shell. And Echo, they were just obliterating the stage way too fast. So then I thought, you know what? Can Echo just do this on her own? And it turns out she can. She absolutely can do this stage on her own, which is kind of crazy. I didn't think she was this good. Again, for a PvP character, she does have a self-buffing lead, which is nice. But she's got a lot of AoE. She's got a lot of lingering damage and lingering debuffs. And yeah, she just gets it done. And she's tanky as hell, so she doesn't ever get... you can see her leadership keeps popping and cleansing. She doesn't get snared or stunned and sort of broken out of her rotation, which would otherwise kill her. The next stage here at 191, I cannot remember who it is. Captain Marvel. This one as well, I think, could have been a little bit, like, I could have gone a little bit higher with Captain Marvel, but at this point, you have like 40, 50 characters left, and you know, it's her or it's a tier 4, right? There's really not a lot of choice. So I would have had to have used another, like, I would have had to save another character by using it later in order to push her up to a bit of a higher stage. But again, at some point, your characters are going to outpace the damage, HP, and defense of Shadowland characters, and it's going to get really easy again. You know, like, some of these stages are just crazy easy. One of the stages that isn't crazy easy, but I was actually really impressed with, is Cyclops here on 192. This is a CTP of Insight, I believe, Cyclops build, level 80, newest uniform. But I didn't think he could do it. I thought I would have to waste Cyclops as like a leadership / support for another clear. But I was like, you know what? Screw it. This is a Blast Rumble. Let's see if he has what it takes. And he does. I had to play manually. I had to get used to it. But I really love Cyclops' skills. I think his animations are really gorgeous. I was really disappointed when they gave him the naked tier 4. I still think he deserves a uniform. Maybe like an X-Men 97 type vibe. But yeah, Cyclops 80 can do... probably 200. You can see here I had 40 seconds left. He could probably do stage 200 of Shadowland, which is crazy for a uniform that was released in 2022. It's almost 2 years old now. Yeah, absolutely wild there. No surprise here. Shadow Shell absolutely rips this stage. She certainly could have gone higher, but at a certain point I just ran out of characters, so there weren't any weaker substitutes that I could have used. Here, I kind of messed up. I have a PvP build on Spider-Gwen, and I have a PvP build. I have no build, actually, no Obelisk on Cap. This was a bit of an overreaction. I didn't need to do this, so I probably could have gone 1 or 2 stages higher, just based on the fact that I could have saved 1 or 2 of these characters. For example, if you want to see ways that I could have already improved my clear, I probably could have used Spider-Gwen on the previous floor on 193, and then used Shadow Shell here, maybe just Shadow Shell and Cap, and not use Blue Dragon at all, and then save Blue Dragon for another stage. But at the same time, you'll see that the timer is going down, and they're not dead yet. These characters have such insane HP pools, the enemies in Shadowland, once you get into the high stages, that you need so much firepower to take them down. It's actually bonkers. And then on the flip side, you have stages like this, where you basically one-shot them. And this is just what you have to get used to with Shadowland. Some of the stages are just way too easy relative to other stages right at the same, right around the same floor, because of the way that characters take damage, the number of characters, damage saturation, damage overlap, shared HP bars, and stuff like that. Here, again, I think this might be a rage or might be an energy on Star-Lord, but he just crushes the stage with a very basic level 80 build. No sweat whatsoever. I think I was playing this one manually just because he was goofing around and doing some dumbass shit at the beginning. And you could go back and watch that on 1x speed if you want. But no, he crushed it by himself, which was quite nice because I hate Star-Lord. Here, I know for sure that I was playing on auto at the beginning, and you can see the damage is really bad because the AI doesn't know how to properly spam. So 30 seconds in, and Iron Fist has most of his HP. Now I took over. You can see I start pressing 1, I start pressing 3, and you can see the HP starts chunking. Absolutely chunking because I started playing manually. So yeah, I saw that in real time, and I realized he wouldn't have time. With a minute 30 left, I absolutely could have saved Ebony for a higher stage. But again, I could have saved him for a higher stage if I play on manual, or he wouldn't have even cleared 197 if I played on auto. Same thing goes here for Invisible Woman. She's playing on auto, and she's playing like shit. She's barely killing them with a minute gone here, and you have to be fast because at the 1 minute 30 mark, you're going to run out of time with Cap and Hulkbuster still waiting. So what did I have to do? I had to take over and start playing on manual, and here you go. I start playing on manual. I start using all of the skills. I start proccing and stuff like that, and their HP bars just start melting. So yeah, this is a big, this is a big kind of important note for Shadowland. If you don't want to do this at all, you're probably better off queuing up 2 or 3 characters at the same time, focusing more on the rumbles and getting them done. Here, I also had to play on manual for Loki because of the way that his rotation works. Loki is a terrible autoplay character, possibly the worst autoplay character. Using a tier 4 this early feels bad for sure because it's sub 200, but at the same time, there's very few stages that Loki will be able to do because you need multiple targets for his 5th skill to do enough damage. So you have to keep that in mind for Loki specifically. It otherwise doesn't work. So you kind of are hoping to see that universal villain rumble stage for Loki. Here, I could have definitely saved Miles. I tried, funny enough, on 200, I had previously tried Miles and Spider-Man against the Spider-Verse rumble, and they were completely unable to do it. So it really sometimes is all about just rerolling the stage and accepting that it's not you, it's the crazy scaling of the stage. But yeah, definitely could have saved Miles for a higher stage. Not too sure about Angel and Spider-Man. Didn't really get to test them, so I can definitely see inefficiencies in this video for sure. And I think with just the change that we've talked about, plus a couple that you're maybe going to see soon, I could have pushed to 250. So I think 250 is probably a really good target for me in the future if I ever want to do this again. Obviously, including new characters that we get, maybe 255. But yeah, again, Shadowland is definitely going to be a game mode where if you want to climb, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So the more effort you put into Shadowland, the higher you're going to go. The more casual you go, the more you're going to see like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, etc., etc. Whenever you're using tier 4s as well in Shadowland, keep in mind that you can leverage really good strikers to do like insane burst damage. So you can see whenever I pop the Black Bolt there for Black Widow, their HP bar just chunks because he does just like such insane damage. And then look at this, a level 80 out DPSing a tier 4. That's just the way it is. Some level 80s are just built different, and Storm is absolutely one of them. Absolutely could have held her for a higher stage. She completely shredded it. Here, Moon Knight on 204 also completely shredded it. I could have refreshed and re-rolled. Again, these would have been good stages to use like Cap instead of wasting him on that that triple Rumble or Spider-Gwen or something like that. Here, Quicksilver, I had to play on manual because he wasn't cutting it on auto. And it was pretty close, I think, on manual anyways. But it is a PvP build. It's a Authority PvP build, so I don't blame him. It's also level 80, not tier 4. So, you know, it could have been worse. Could have been better. But I think the rocket stage is quite nice. I think if you can refresh and reroll for the rocket stage, it's quite easy for speed types. You just lock him down the whole time. He never gets that immunity. He never gets that dodge. And you just rip him. Most characters have pretty big AoE nowadays on at least one skill. So you don't have to worry about running away from him and breaking the pots. You will just break the pots, you know, by accident when you're just popping the other skills. So yeah, we get that 75 CCF, and we're on to 206. I believe here on 206 you can see Carnage. I had tried to do the stage with just Carnage. Because of the lasers, Carnage can accumulate, and I think he was very close to clearing the stage, but I failed at the end. I ran out with just a little bit of HP left. So rather than trying again and burning another 3 minutes worth of battery and my time and my fingers, I said, screw it. We're just going to use Black Panther, and he absolutely obliterated the stage. And I just kept Carnage in there because I figure if he can't auto or manual even 206, he's probably going to have an even harder time on 207, 208, 209, whenever I can actually get to him. So, and then those stages won't have accumulation either. That was kind of his like best case scenario. Gamora, on the other hand, this is, I believe, full auto. I don't think I intervened at all. And she is just amazing. She's so good. She's a really good autoplay rotation. She goes through all of her skills. Just super impressive, man. She definitely could have gone to a higher stage, as you can see here. She's absolutely shredding them. She's basically only taking a lot longer in terms of the timing because it's on auto fully. And so you saw there for about 10 or 15 seconds, Iron Man was just dodging and flying into the corner. So if you played manual a little bit by like just positioning her so that she can DPS them both, she could easily be in like the 250 stage range. Here for Sharon, I gotta play this on manual 100%. This is a great stage because of the guns shooting you, although it's still difficult to accumulate. I still found it difficult to accumulate. And you can see there are times where I pop the tier 3 and it doesn't really do much damage. And there are other times where I pop it and it absolutely rips. So, yeah, I mean, it helps that he has, like, what, 90 million HP? He's kind of got a lot of HP, guys, or whatever. 890 million? I can't see the numbers to tell how many digits there are. But, yeah, I also keep in mind that I was scared if she gets hit by one of the bullets and she doesn't have immunity up, she'll just die. So it's a bit of a tightrope to walk there. Here, Adam on 209, I was pretty impressed. I think I was playing this one manually, but he hits really hard. It's that extra pierce that he gets. He's got obviously he's got the team up collection, but he's got the base 5% pierce increase, as a lot of native tier 2s have. So he just hits really, really hard with just his goofy skills. But I did have a targeting issue with Punisher walking away, so I had to go and fetch him because I was otherwise going to run out of time. So there again, if I just let that go on auto instead of being on manual, 100% would have ran out of time and would have thought that maybe he can't clear the stage, but obviously he can clear it and maybe even go to a higher stage. Doctor Doom, so depressing. Yeah, Doctor Doom deserved so much better than this. Unfortunately, this is what we get. And yeah, I mean, good for Shadowland, but nobody got Doctor Doom and tier 4'd him for Shadowland, so it's a bit depressing. But he's good on auto. I think this was full auto. I don't think I was doing anything. I don't even want to look at him, dude, to be honest with you. So I won't narrate the rest of this fight, and I'll just drink some more water. Hate that punk. I did get the Mega Tier 2 ticket, though. Mystique did really well. Her damage seemed a little bit sus at first, but then she starts ramping as she stacks all defense down, and it starts to apply. And then you see these big chunks of damage. So really, really nice there. Obviously, she has the support ability, but it's more about stacking the all defense down and ramping that damage, especially because when Bullseye comes in, he has type advantage over her, right? So you see that gray damage that she's dealing. She definitely could have gone to a higher stage, though. She cleared that in under 90 seconds. I definitely wasted her a little bit. Also wasted Dr. Octopus here, but again, I was at the point where I had very few. I don't know if I had any level 80s left. And I was just trying to get through the characters that I sort of saw as weaker. I figured that Dr. Octopus wouldn't be as strong on auto as he is on manual because of how complex his rotation is, but he still did super duper well. Here, Professor X, I'm playing him on auto first, and you can see the damage is not great. He's at risk of not finishing in time. So I believe around here, I started playing him myself. Yeah, I started playing him myself, and you can see the damage starts ramping. I start popping the tier 3. I'm popping all 5 skills instead of just 1 or 2. Popping the tier 4 really fast. And he actually, I don't know, am I playing on auto? No, I think here is where I started playing on auto. Yeah, I think it was here that I started playing on auto. And I realized, like, oh shit, I'm going to run out of time. Yeah, I think for the first 90 seconds, I wasn't playing at all. So yeah, you could go back and watch that. For the first 90 seconds, I wasn't playing at all. And it's basically night and day. The first 90 seconds was half of his HP bar. And then I did the rest of his HP bar in 45 seconds. This was probably the biggest mistake of the whole Shadowland run. Where did their HP go? You blink and you miss it. This is Hela with a PvP build, obliterating that stage in 30 seconds. I have no doubt in my mind that you could use Hela on one of the very last stages that you get to if you have her at tier 4. She is just an absolute monster. Here, I definitely could have gone with a different team. I tried Thanos solo and he couldn't do it. So I brought in Silver Surfer because he was the only other universal villain I had besides like mega heavyweights like Jean. And Jean has a PvE build now, but Surfer has a PvP build. So I thought, okay, it's not going to be that much different. But he obliterated the stage. So Thanos alone was running out of time and couldn't do the stage. With Silver Surfer, they wrecked it in a minute. So again, Silver Surfer and Hela were probably my biggest mistakes here. You just have to learn for next time. But yeah, definitely hold on to those characters for later if you are climbing Shadowland because they are insanely good. Here, this is definitely an overreaction to use Black Bolt, but it was also a case of like, I just don't have that many villains left. And so I gotta chew through some of them, and based on their build and based on when they were released, this was kind of like my best option. Gladiator absolutely rips this stage. Just insane damage, really nice corralling, like he just groups them together super nicely. There, Gwenpool almost died. So I started playing her manually, and then playing her manually, I realized, like, if I had played this on auto, she either would have died or she would have run out of times. Because you can see it's pretty tight. There's not a lot of time to waste. You get to the half HP mark at about a minute. So you're going to take about 2 minutes, maybe a minute and 45 seconds to clear this. Yeah, I think absolutely if I'd done this full auto with the way that they don't cancel skills, draining my battery there, I would have run out of time. So yeah, keep that in mind for someone like Gwenpool. Odin here, I believe I had tried on another stage. I believe it was the universal stage where it's an entry. This is also an entry, but it was a universal entry where you have Thor on the second round. And Thor in the second round has lightning immunity. And Odin penetrates lightning immunity, but not 100%. So I actually ran out of time because I killed Loki and I killed Odin with no uniform, but I couldn't kill Thor. So just keep that in mind. Penetration, not always 100%, even for the big dogs, even for the heavy hitters. Ant-Man here getting what little use of him I have left. Very, very cool. Love seeing his animations, but still disappointed that I tier 4'd a character who is so useless in today's age, despite only being a year and a half old. But yeah, he gets that done super duper fast. Rogue absolutely obliterates shits on this stage, like sub 30 seconds almost. A savage. Cable as well. This one, these are all manual at this point. I don't think I was doing anything auto. Just rips that stage in 11 seconds. Just true savage. Same thing with Luna here. Brilliant CTP. Just absolutely shredding these stages. Which is in stark contrast to the next one. This Venom stage. I believe I had to play this twice. Because the first time I played, for some reason, the targeting was off. Or the targeting got, like, I don't know, got messed up. And when I killed Mordo, Arrow jumped out and one-shot me. Yeah, believe it or not, you can get one-shot on these stages. They're so high. You have to be careful. And you can see Venom doesn't have his immunity, immortality, invincibility, whatever, up all of the time. Sometimes his health bar is blue. So when it's blue, if they're not crowd controlled, boom, they just bop, they just one-shot you. So yeah, and that took almost 2 minutes of like hard play. Wolverine here absolutely annihilates the stage. Just no doubt in my mind that he is the best PvE combat type right now. Look at this. Greed build, and he just absolutely geeks it. He just geeks it and freaks it. Just so much damage, so much crowd control, and literally zero chance that you die and anything bad happens here. Old Iron Man uniform, he could absolutely go higher. You can see he just melts the last 2/3 of their HP, last 1/3 of their HP bar. Yeah, sure, he could have gone higher. Then again, a lot of these characters could have gone higher. Look at this. Full PvP build. This is Conquest Sentry, and he just shreds that stage in 30 seconds. You just get to a certain point, and your characters are way too strong when you're using level, like, tier 4s. Even if you're on stage like 500 of Shadowland, I would just shred that stage. No doubt in my mind. Look at that. That Ghost Rider stage, 4 seconds. So this is what I'm trying to say. Shadowland is super easy at the beginning, and it's super easy at the end, and it's just in the middle that you have to be careful not to get characters stuck. There's 17-second clear there by Doctor Strange. You're going to see characters repeat now because we're getting to the end, and I'm going to use my refreshes. I cut the refreshes out, but you're going to see Doctor Strange come back. You're going to see Jean come back. You're going to see, I believe, Magneto and Scarlet Witch come back, and one other character. I think maybe Thor. Here you're going to see Thor. There we go. CTP selector. There we go, boys. It took me how many years? How many years? Crazy, man. People should have roasted me harder for not getting that CTP sooner. But there you go. Thor clutching the CTP out in 14 seconds. And then Jean here. This is the stage that I had to refresh 236 because I had tried to clear the Phoenix Force stage, but it was not happening. Instead, I refreshed to a low tier stage, and she shreds it in 16 seconds. So yeah, just refresh to a low tier stage. Super duper easy. Here's Jean again, refreshed and shredding another team. Again, if you're confused why I'm reusing certain characters, Wolverine was my 5th refresh. It's because I have a VIP bonus. VIP bonuses, I think, for Shadowland start at like VIP 13 or 15, and you get 1 refresh, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and 5 is the max. So the highest theoretical stage that you can max out at is 275, but there are players out there who are either at 280 or 285 because they intentionally upped their VIP to gain more refreshes strategically, but that's like a mega 5-head move that you can only do once per account. Here for Doctor Strange, I was just trying to flex how strong he is by doing the Spider-Verse stage with Doctor Strange. He has type disadvantage as well, but I almost ran out of time. So don't let your cockiness get ahead of you. I was a little bit worried. This is full manual. I was like gunning it, and I barely cleared in time. And then we got Magneto here, and I believe Deadpool here to round out the no, it's Scarlet Witch and then Deadpool to round up the last 2 stages here. So yeah, this was super duper fun. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me narrate for an hour and 17 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it through the whole video, I appreciate you. Hopefully this helped people out. It inspires you to climb a little bit higher, and check out the stats there. Those insane stats on the Shadowland stages. Thanks so much for watching. Like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.